All right, let's talk about one of the most, well, just plain weirdest stories in all of military history. We're going to dive into a battle where the army's biggest, most dangerous enemy turned out to be itself. I mean, seriously, can you even picture this? You've got this huge, powerful army all ready for a fight, and they somehow manage to completely tear themselves apart before the enemy even shows up. It sounds like a comedy, but it's the very real, very tragic story of the Battle of Karansebes. And yeah, it might just be the single worst friendly fire disaster ever. So the big question is, how on earth does that even happen? How does an entire army just defeat itself? Well, to get our heads around this massive screw-up, we've got to rewind and set the scene. Okay, so picture it. The year is 1788. The Austro-Turkish War is in full swing. We're in a place that's now part of Romania, and the Austrian army is on the march. Their mission? It sounds pretty simple, right? Just get to the town of Karansebes, make camp, and send out some scouts to see where the Ottoman army is. What could possibly go wrong? And look, we're not talking about some small patrol here. This was a massive force, 100,000 soldiers. But here's the kicker. It was a huge mix of people from all over the Austrian Empire. You had Austrians, Serbs, Croats, Hungarians, all speaking different languages. Now, that number, 100,000, and especially that language barrier, you're going to want to remember that. It's going to be a huge deal in just a minute. So you've got this giant war machine, all this planning, all this power, and it's all about to come crashing down. And not because of some brilliant enemy strategy. Nope. It's going to be because of something way, way smaller. We're talking about some booze and a really dumb argument. So here's how it all kicks off. A group of scouts goes out and no sign of the enemy. But they do find some local folks selling schnapps. So what do? They buy a bunch and, start to have a pretty good time. The problem starts when another group, this time infantry, shows up and asks for some. The scouts, probably feeling a little tipsy, say, no way. Things get heated, shouting starts, and then, bang, a single shot rings out. That one little sound is the spark that's about to ignite an absolute inferno. And this is the moment. This is where a tiny, stupid fight over alcohol just completely spirals out of control into an absolute disaster. Because now you've got darkness, you've got confusion, and you've got a total breakdown of communication. This little brawl is about to become a battle against an enemy that isn't even there. Right in the middle of all that chaos, somebody panics and shouts it out. Turks! The Turks are here! And that's it. That's all it takes. Suddenly, soldiers in the dark, who have no clue what's actually going on, hear that cry, and their minds jump to the worst possible conclusion. The Ottomans have found us. We're being ambushed. Remember what I said about the language barrier? Well, this is where it becomes a complete nightmare. It was the perfect storm. You got guys speaking German, Hungarian, Slavic languages. Nobody can understand each other's orders or even shouts to calm down. It's pitch black, a bunch of them are drunk, and communication has just ceased to exist. Once that panic took hold, there was absolutely no putting the genie back in the bottle. So the Austrian officers, they see this. They see their own men running around in blind terror, and they're desperately trying to get a grip on the situation. They start yelling the command in German, halt, halt, which just means stop, stop. They're trying to fix things. But what they're about to do is, well, it's going to make everything 1,000 times worse. And this right here is the fatal, tragic, almost unbelievable mistake. To the soldiers who didn't speak German, and there were a lot of them, that sharp German command, halt, sounded an awful lot like Allah, which of course they knew as the Ottoman battle cry. So the very command meant to stop the panic, in their ears, confirmed their absolute worst fear. They thought, it's true, we really are being attacked. So now you've got this stampede of terrified soldiers running for their lives back towards their own main camp. A general there peers into the darkness and sees what? A chaotic mess of men and horses charging right at him. He doesn't see his own panicked troops, he sees an enemy cavalry attack. And he makes the worst possible assumption. This was it, the point of no return. Convinced his camp was being overrun, the general gave the order, fire the artillery. And just like that, the Austrian cannons opened up on their own men. The confusion turned into an absolute slaughter. Soldiers were firing at shadows, at each other, totally convinced the enemy was all around them. When the sun finally came up, the shooting stopped. The battle was over, and the camp was just destroyed. But the truly mind-blowing, absurd part of all this, they wouldn't figure that out for a couple more days. So this entire army of 100,000 men, after spending a whole night literally fighting itself, just packs up and retreats in total chaos. They're convinced they just fought off a massive Ottoman attack and barely escaped with their lives. The unbelievable truth, the real Ottoman army was still 2 full days' march away. I mean, can you just imagine being one of the Ottoman soldiers showing up 2 days later? You're expecting this epic battle against 100,000 enemy troops, and instead you find a battlefield already covered with dead and wounded Austrian soldiers. The Austrians had completely done their job for them. The Ottomans just walked in and took the town, not a single shot fired. Now, historians argue about the exact numbers, but most sources put the casualties at over 1,000 men. Think about that. Over 1,000 soldiers killed or wounded by their own side. And it all started because a few drunk scouts didn't want to share their schnapps. It's just incredible. This whole disaster is probably the most extreme and honestly the most horribly perfect example of what we call friendly fire. It's a brutal lesson from history about how dangerous bad communication can be, especially in the fog of war. And you better believe this story is still used today to teach officers why clear command and control is so important. So when you look back at the Battle of Karansebes, it really makes you think, doesn't it? It leaves you with this one big question. What's really more dangerous? The enemy you can see coming, or the confusion and chaos you create for yourself?